So it's time to discuss the most important political issue you probably haven't heard too much about in the past few days. Pakistan and India are currently fighting, like actually fighting, and you're about to see why that's terrifying. There's two news clips here that are spliced together, and you're going to get a little bit of the history of the region as well. So you're going to learn a lot in these next few minutes watching these clips. And you'll come to understand why this may be the number one most important story happening in the world right now.
Last night, India carried out a bombing raid in Pakistani territory, claiming to target a terrorist group responsible for a deadly attack on Indian forces 2 weeks ago. As William Brangham reports, this is the most serious escalation in years between the two nuclear-armed adversaries.
Indian officials said they successfully destroyed a training camp for the group known as Jaish-e-Mohammed. That group claimed responsibility for a massive suicide bomb attack 2 weeks ago that killed 38 members of India's security forces. Today, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, standing before photos of those killed 2 weeks ago, celebrated this retaliatory strike.
I will not let this country bow. I take an oath upon this soil that I won't let this country be erased.
That earlier attack occurred in Kashmir, the highly disputed region between India and Pakistan that has been a source of conflict for decades between the two nations. For more on all this, I'm joined now by Sumit Ganguly, Distinguished Professor of Political Science at Indiana University in Bloomington. Professor, thank you very much for being here. Before we get to this most recent escalation, I wonder if you could just explain for those people who have not been following this, why is it that Kashmir, that region between the two nations, is such an open wound between them?
This is an issue that was not resolved at the time when the British were withdrawing from the subcontinent in 1947. And both India and Pakistan laid claim to this border state which abuts both the two countries. India wanted to claim Kashmir because it's a Muslim majority region and wanted to demonstrate that a significant minority could thrive within a predominantly Hindu country. Pakistan, by the same token, which had been created as a homeland for the Muslims of South Asia, felt that an adjoining region had to be part of Pakistan, and otherwise Pakistan would be incomplete. And it's this sense of incompleteness that has driven Pakistani policy and helped drive Pakistan's claim to Kashmir. But since India controls 2/3 of the state, which is what it managed to hold after Pakistan launched an invasion shortly after the British departure, that it refuses to concede ground, and Pakistan holds on to the 1/3 that it does. There have been multiple wars trying to resolve this issue and a series of negotiations, but they have all ultimately run aground.
So given that long acrimony, how do you see this most recent escalation unfolding over the next few days?
This is a somewhat fraught situation, particularly since this is the first time that the Indian Air Force has struck across what is called the line of control, which is the de facto international border between India and Pakistan in this disputed state. And this is the first time that India used its Air Force across the border since the 1971 war. And consequently, sentiments in Pakistan, I suspect, are quite raw at the moment, and Prime Minister Imran Khan will feel compelled to respond in some fashion. So the next few days and weeks are really a time probably laden with considerable tension, and we could see artillery barrages take place along the line of control.
And let's say that Pakistan does respond with artillery barrages or more. What does India do in response to that?
The Indians probably will return fire, especially in the form of artillery barrages. I doubt that the Indians would try to mount a second airstrike, because by now Pakistan's air defenses are probably on a state of high alert and are likely to remain in the foreseeable future. The fact that their air defenses were penetrated by Indian aircraft is obviously a source of considerable distress to Pakistani decision decision makers, and particularly the overweening Pakistani military establishment.
The U.S. for many, many years has played something of a brokering role between these two countries. What role do you imagine the U.S. playing in trying to diffuse this situation?
Ideally, the U.S. would try and step in and try to broker some sort of a peace. But at this moment, I think if the U.S. were to simply urge restraint in both Islamabad and New Delhi, given the sentiments in New Delhi and in significant parts of northern India, that would not be received very well. I think at this point, New Delhi would want Washington, D.C. to exert considerable pressure on Pakistan, as it has done a few times in the recent past, particularly during the 1999 Kargil War. But suggesting that both sides exercise restraint probably would not be very well received in New Delhi, though that is exactly what Islamabad would want under the circumstances.
Tensions are high between India and Pakistan as both countries order airstrikes against each other. Both countries have nuclear weapons. Pakistan says it shot down 2 Indian warplanes and captured one of their pilots.
This is still happening along the country's borders in the disputed territory of Kashmir, a historic hotbed of conflict. BBC News correspondent Sikandar Karmani is in Islamabad, where Pakistan's prime minister is calling for de-escalation.
So I've just come out of a briefing, a press conference by the Pakistani military. The Pakistani military spokesman broke down the chronology of these dramatic events that took place today. According to him, this began when Pakistani jets from within Pakistani airspace targeted Indian positions within India across the border. As a response to those strikes, he says that Indian jets crossed over into Pakistani airspace, and Pakistani planes shot down 2 Indian jets.
This is the first time in history 2 nuclear-armed powers directly attacked each other. Basically, we are relying on the restraint and the intelligence of the leadership of both sides. Because when nuclear-armed powers attack each other, all it takes is one side to say, fuck this, we're putting an end to this right now. And the bombs are in the air. Absolutely terrifying. You know, multiple previous presidents in the modern era were asked, what's the one issue that keeps you up at night? They didn't say Russia. They didn't say Al-Qaeda. They didn't say North Korea. They didn't say Iran. You know what they said? India and Pakistan. Listen, I think it really is the case that human beings just aren't ready for nuclear technology. We're just not ready. There's this mythology that's been created around the U.S. nuking Hiroshima and Nagasaki, about how, well, since we dropped the weapons then, now everybody knows we shall never do it again. No, that's not the lesson people learned. You pretty much made that up, and actually experts say it's probably inevitable that at some point they will be used again, and when that happens, you're looking at a cataclysmic civilization-ending event in the long run. Think about that. What do they say? I forget what it's called. The apocalypse clock, the end times clock, whatever it's called. That's like 2 minutes to midnight or something. Like we're really on the brink of the worst case scenario happening. Well, now we're even closer, because this is not like, I don't think people really get it. They don't get it. Like, human history is just a litany of everybody fucking everybody up. Like, everybody fighting everybody going to war over religion, going to war over resources, going to war over land, going to war over honor. Like, it's just that's all of human history. And, like, it wasn't even that long ago when a fucking absolute maniacal psychopath tried to take over the world on the basis of eugenics and junk race science. Like, that wasn't even that long ago. That was Hitler. That's not even that long ago. That's in my grandparents' lifetime. So the fact that that happened and the world almost ended, and it wasn't that long ago, and now what? We think we figured everything out in the decade since then? Nonsense. We're just as fucking stupid as we were back then. So I really don't think people get it. Like, people, there's a recency bias that people have where it's like, well, nobody's been nuked recently, so, like, we're good, right? No, not even close to right. And what, like they said in one of the clips there, the U.S. plays as a broker for peace in between those two countries. What do you do when the U.S. administration is totally incompetent and doesn't know anything about the region or anything about what's happening? What do? You fucking run scared. That's what you do. You buy a bunker in the middle of Oklahoma, in rural-ass Oklahoma, and you live in the bunker and you hope that everything doesn't get destroyed around you. I love how I'm not even trying to, and I'm convincing all of you and myself to become an end times prepper. But no, this isn't funny, and I shouldn't be laughing. Yeah, most important story in the world right now. I would argue this even is ahead of North Korea and the U.S. and the peace talks, although that's a close second because we're on the brink of something amazing on that front as we move in the wrong direction on the India and Pakistan front. But God, I hope this all gets worked out, man, because goodness gracious. And I don't know much about the regime in Pakistan, but what I do know is Modi has been described by experts as basically a Hindu fundamentalist, and he's kind of far right. So is that who you want, like, making the decision as to attacks and a war in India? No. That's the equivalent of, like, the Republicans in this country being in control. Like, as bad as the Democrats are, and they're bad, do you trust, just generally speaking from a judgment perspective, do you trust Obama's judgment or Trump's judgment? Come on. And I have a zillion criticisms of Obama, but if you just give me that judgment alone, I'm going Obama 10 out of 10 times, and you're crazy if you don't. So by the same token, I guess India has their own Trump here, and he's the one, like, giving speeches, and oh, God damn it. Seriously, we might have to try to do some. Imagine the entire secular talk community. We all get together and pool our resources and try to do, like, we all do an end times prep thing and we build, like, an underground city or something. No, that wouldn't. The government would in no way allow that to happen. They would kill my ass like I'm David Koresh. They would call me a cult leader and everything. I'm just like, bro, I'm just trying to survive the nuclear apocalypse. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Oh, we're all going to die, aren't we?